Good evening, everyone. The hour being 7 o'clock, we'd like to call the Tooele City Planning Commission meeting to order for, what is the date today? June 14th, 2023. Item number 1 on the agenda is the Pledge of Allegiance. If you'd all rise and join me. I pledge
allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. Item number 2 is roll call. Commissioner Hammer.
Here.
Commissioner Proctor.
Here.
Commissioner Robinson.
Here.
Commissioner Jensen. Here. Commissioner Goches.
Present.
I'm Commissioner Sloan. I'm also here. We're going to excuse Chairman Hamilton, Commissioner Dunn and Newell as they are out of town, and welcome Council People Manzione and Hanson. Thanks for joining us. Item number 3 on the agenda. Public hearing and recommendation on a land use map amendment regarding a request to reassign the land use designation by Wagstaff Investments LLC for approximately 2 acres located at 602 West 3 O'Clock Drive from the existing land use designation of high density residential to regional commercial. Mr. Agard.
Thank you, Commissioners. So as was mentioned, this property is located as a 2-acre parcel. Well, they would like to amend the land use for 2 acres. The parcel does not exist yet, but this is highlighted in red. This is the area that they are interested in changing. It is at the intersection of 3 O'Clock Drive and SR 36 with Coleman Street located to the northeast. The property is currently zoned MR12, which is multifamily residential, 12 dwelling units per acre. We have some R7 to the west and some RR1 and R7 to the east. The current land use designation is HDR, high density residential, as was mentioned by the chair. This is a land use designation that requires multifamily residential zones and residential uses, such as townhomes and apartments, condominiums, things of that nature. This land use designation is not permit any commercial, both commercial zones and commercial land uses. The applicant wishes to change the land use designation of the property to RC Regional Commercial. The owner or the applicant is Wagstaff Investments, and they do represent Holiday Oil. So they do have designs to put a convenience store and gasoline services at this corner. You'll notice that the property to the north is proposed to remain HDR. Staff would like to suggest that the Planning Commission consider recommending involving that property to the north also in the land use map amendment, so it does not create a relatively strangely configured and difficult piece to develop for multifamily residential. If it were to go commercial as well, it could likely develop as a small office building or maybe some small retail or something of that nature. The other thing staff wanted to point out to the Planning Commission, this was also in your staff report, is that the commercial zone of neighborhood commercial also permits convenience stores with gasoline services as a conditional use permit, which is exactly what the RC zoning does as well. So if the Planning Commission were to feel that a regional commercial zone here is a little too intense for this area, the applicant could still accomplish what they want to accomplish there with the neighborhood commercial zone. The regional commercial zone is a district that caters to regional type uses, business parks, educational facilities, larger and higher end commercial. So if the Planning Commission were inclined to forward a recommendation with that in mind, the land use designation for the neighborhood commercial is community commercial. It's not regional commercial. That's in your report. If you have any questions, I'd be happy to explain that further for you. As you know, the land use map amendment must occur before the zoning can be considered. This is a precursor to any changes to the zoning maps. By changing the land use, it does enable us the opportunity to process an application for a zoning map amendment and then consider the zoning for the property. This item is a public hearing. Notices were sent to property owners within 200 feet of not just the RC parcel, but the the entire HDR parcel to the north of 3 O'Clock Drive. I did receive one phone call this afternoon from a resident. They did not give me their name, but they were just asking some questions about the differences between HDR and MDR, and when the property was in fact rezoned to regional commercial, which was back in September of 2022. Or excuse me, rezoned to MR12 was back in September of 2022. So that's what's being requested by Wagstaff Investments. If the Planning Commission has any questions, I'd be happy to answer them for you.
Thank you, Andrew. Questions from the commission?
I have a question, Andrew. So the parcel between the subject property and Coleman Street, do you have a rough idea of how many acres that is or how big that is?
It's about 1.5 acres.
About 1.5 acres.
Further questions?
I have a question.
Please.
Andrew, you indicated that that property that borders Coleman could possibly be an access road. Is that something that's required? And I know that this borders Main Street SR 36, so it would require a new traffic study from the state. So do we need to consider that before we make a decision on the land use?
That's an excellent question. The applicant would like to have access to Coleman Street. The facility would function better with 2 accesses. They did provide a revised traffic study that included or amended the study to include a convenience store with gasoline services. And I did forward that to the planning commissioners today. I don't know if you all received that in your email. But after reading through that traffic study, the recommendation that came back from the engineer was that a deceleration lane needs to be installed on 3 O'Clock Drive where they're proposing to enter. There were no concerns listed in the traffic study about the access to Coleman Street. But the applicant would like to see that because it will help the business have greater flexibility and accessibility.
And I just wondered, how come that wasn't included in this request? There's no, design for road access. I just wondered why.
Well, this is just the land use map amendment, so they haven't provided any, they aren't required to provide any site drawings during this process, where we're just considering the land use. Most of those issues would be addressed during the site plan application.
And putting a road through high-density residential, that zone, that would require also a change. Is that correct, a land use change?
To the HDR parcel to the north? Mm-hmm. In regards to the traffic study?
In regard to the road that they want to access their property?
I don't understand what you're
You're talking
asking.
Well,
about
right,
an entrance from Coleman onto the property itself?
Yeah, would that also require a change in the land use because it's currently zoned still the MR12, that secondary property?
So the HDR parcel to the north, it's not included in the application. The applicant did not include that. However, staff is recommending that we do consider including that into the land use map amendment to make it regional commercial
Okay.
because of the road situation and how that could improve the commercial viability of that entire corner.
So are we considering that tonight with this request, or will that come later?
What we're considering is what the applicant has asked for. However, the Planning Commission can forward an alternative recommendation to the City Council. So if the Planning Commission felt that that would be an appropriate action to take, you can make that recommendation.
Okay. Thank you.
Further questions? I've got a couple. One I can think of off the top of my head. You'd mentioned just now the traffic study recommending a deceleration lane, and you said on 3 O'Clock Drive. Did I understand that correctly, or did I understand the traffic study to say a deceleration lane on 36 entering?
No, it's
3 o'clock.
for 3 O'Clock Drive. I did see a very conceptual site plan, and what they're trying to do is they're trying to pull the access into the Holiday Oil as far away from 3 O'Clock or SR 36 as possible. So it would be closer to the C in the clock, on the word clock. And so when people come around that corner and they want to turn into Holiday Oil, they recommend that there be a deceleration lane there. No alterations to SR 36.
The other question, pursuant to something that you mentioned earlier, did the option for that neighborhood commercial or community commercial, was that presented to the applicant, and is there a reason why they want to stick with regional?
It was not presented to the applicant. The reason I believe they went with regional commercial is they did a similar land use map and zoning map amendment, I would say, maybe 3 months ago for property on 600 West, 1000 North. And this is exactly what they asked for on that property. So,
Okay. Further questions from the commission? Okay, this does require a public hearing, so we'll go ahead and open that public hearing. Ask those of you that want to, besides Kalani, that want to come up and talk to us, make sure that do we have the sign-in sheet up here, or do you have a? Okay, we do have a sign-up sheet. Please give us your contact and your name and your contact information. Please keep your comments to about 2 minutes, and we'll go ahead and open that up.
For this traffic study, as we discussed before, there's a lot of traffic on 3 O'Clock Drive and SR 36. And we discussed before when we were here and we did it with the MR 12. With the amount of traffic in that, we discussed possible, if there would ever be a traffic light there. With this traffic study, is that included in this? Because it would be needed to put a convenience store on that corner. A traffic light would be necessary for the amount of traffic that would be coming in.
I will let staff deal with that. I think I know the answer, but what is your name?
Cecilia Linder.
Thank you, Mrs. Linder. I will ask that question of staff, but my recollection is that the study did not require, it didn't require or not require, it's saying that UDOT's long-range plan does not show one there. And the results of the study, if I understand them correctly, Andrew can correct me if I'm wrong, didn't suggest a change be required there.
And so how's that going to affect all the traffic coming in and out of that road, with all the traffic that's already coming in and out of that road for the school and for the children's soccer games and baseball games and all of the other traffic that's being funneled in and out of 3 O'Clock Drive? To add a convenience store in there, how's that going to affect all of that traffic?
Not a question that we're prepared to answer tonight. The applicant may be able to, but that's not something we have that information. Let's get everybody else first, and then we'll let you have your shot. Thank you. Further comments, questions from, bring it, Kalani.
I'm Kalani Mascherino. I live on 2 O'Clock Drive. So we've been here before, and since the east side of Highway 36 is also residential, and I thought the last time we were here, there was a giant development that was going up there. Is that still going up there? Because that adds even more traffic. And where are the outlets for, I thought one was over by the Masons, and then one was going to be, the map before this shows the R1, that's the single-family homes. Yeah. It just seems like a bit of a cluster if we're adding all that multi-density on the end. And again, there's nowhere safe for the buses to turn. The dump truck or the sand and gravel trucks are there for UDOT. And then what these maps don't ever show is the hundreds of homes just past this. And now we're also asking there to be 326 acres of industrial just past 1050. So how much can SR 36 take, as well as the residents that already live there? I'm just super nervous about, because my 15-year-old is about to be 16 and he'll be turning off the highway. And I'm telling you, the deceleration, when 3 O'Clock Drive is a sheet of ice, you're just hoping you can take one side or the other and not take anybody with you when you're when it freezes over in the winter. So I am against this being commercial. We were okay, we came to a compromise about the MR12, but I don't think commercial. And also, I know the applicant is here, but I am concerned about them adding, I know the fuel trucks would come in, but are trucks that are fueling coming in as well? Like it's a travel stop with showers and all that other stuff, like the extra overnight, are truck drivers sleeping there? Are people boondocking in their campers? Like, I don't know. It just attracts a certain crowd of people that we maybe don't need. So, thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Mascherino. Any other comment? Hearing none, we will close this public hearing and ask the applicant if you'd like to come forward and make a presentation, hopefully touch on some of the comments that you've heard.
Yeah, for sure. Thank you. My name is Brent Neal, and I'm with Holiday Oil, also with Wagstaff Investments. So thanks for letting me present. A couple issues that we just want to top, and I'll address some of their concerns. So we were looking mainly at the access on Coleman, just because if it stays at MR12 or if it stays as commercial and regional commercial on the back end as well, we just figured if we had site maneuverability coming in off of 3 o'clock and then at least being able to go back off Coleman instead of funneling everything back to 3 o'clock would allow traffic to maneuver a little bit better. So that's why we were kind of pushing for that access on Coleman. We did reach out to UDOT, and just with the distance requirements between the two streets, there's no way to get a right in, right out or anything off of Highway 36. So we feel that an access on Coleman is necessary just to alleviate some of that pressure off of 3 o'clock. And the traffic study does show it right now is operating as an A, or it would operate as an A, and then 5 years from now it would still operate as an A. In the traffic study, it does show that they would recommend a right in, right out, just because of that curve being so close to Highway 36 and UDOT control. So whether signs or a port chop or something like that, we can make that access a little bit safer as well. The traffic light, where it's UDOT operates Highway 36, the city can make a recommendation, but it's all entirely up to UDOT as far as a traffic light, and the traffic study did not include a traffic light at that time. Excuse me. So we would be looking to do a gas station here and a convenience store with fuel pumps, where it's a 2-acre site. The whole entire thing's 2 acre, and if we have like a drive or a road on that west side, it is going to be one of our smaller sites. So typically our sites don't account for any kind of large trucks. Other than our fuel trucks, we don't consider ourselves a Love's or a TI or anything like that. But other campers could come in, other semi trucks, but we don't anticipate anyone staying there long term. We have plenty of gas stations in neighborhoods or near neighborhoods where they operate as more of like a neighborhood store instead of a large functioning truck stop. So that's the address I would say there. And I'd love that. Yeah, any questions or anything else I
Questions
could
for the
address?
I have one question. I'm having a hard time conceptualizing the access from Coleman getting to that 2 acres. Do you guys have like a plan in your head that you can kind of describe?
Like Andrew talked about, we have a very, very rough idea. Talking with the sellers who own that north part, as he mentioned, the access on 3 o'clock would go across that west property line, and they're kind of showing it wrapping around or heading north along the property line and then going up behind those houses as well. So the access on Coleman would be pushed a little bit as far west as or northwest as it could, with a private drive or a cross-access drive going along that western boundary of the property. And again, I'm not sure what the seller's intentions are with that other piece, but anything that would be there would come off of that drive from the west side of the property.
So different, you guys own this 2 acres? Or
We're under contract.
Under contract, okay.
Yep, so we're still under due diligence on it, so.
I have a question. Did Mr. Agard's comment about the neighborhood commercial instead of regional commercial?
Yeah,
is that something
if
you
it
guys-
operates as the same, I know it sounded like the pumps would be considered a conditional use. I'm not sure if they're a conditional use under regional commercial.
I think they are, yeah.
Okay. And typically, we have car washes at our site, and some about half do, half don't. So I'm not sure if a neighborhood commercial or regional commercial, if there's a conditional use. Most of the time there is. Even with regional commercial, a lot of times car wash is a conditional use.
Okay.
But Okay. But again, I mean, we love the idea and we think it would operate and service the community well with the gas station on that south end. But we're still very, very preliminary stages of how it would face and things like that. Other than the drive would be on the west side.
Okay.
Point of clarification. Just for point of clarification, UDOT has not allowed a right-in entrance, so the only access that you have right now to that property is 3 o'clock drive, and you
Correct.
have not secured the other property off of Coleman to be able to guarantee that there will be an access there. So the only one that we're talking about right now is 3 o'clock drive, in and
Correct.
out.
Yep. So after talking with UDOT, making sure that if we did get approval from the city to do an access on Coleman, if UDOT would be okay with it, UDOT said they would talk with the city, but they would be they wouldn't deny it, just being so close to their property. So I think it really comes down to the traffic study and then the city too, working with staff to see if that would work. But yes, as of right now, it would be just off 3 o'clock unless we can secure that Coleman access.
But you don't own that extra property.
No, that's the seller, but we're working with the seller to,
Okay.
and we both think it's crucial to have anything kind of move forward to get that Coleman access.
Okay.
So,
Thank you.
Additional questions? Thank you, Mr. Neal.
okay,
Appreciate it.
thank you.
Okay, I'll bring it back to the commission for additional question, comments, or motion.
I'd like to mention a
Mr.
couple of
Baker,
things,
please.
Chairman. One of the reasons that Andrew and I are recommending that you consider the northern parcel as well in this action is, and that you consider a neighborhood or general commercial as opposed to the regional commercial, is that I worry that a regional commercial zoning designation with a regional commercial zoning would unduly tie the property owner's hands for other potentially desirable or appropriate retail or professional office or other types of uses that the regional commercial zoning district wouldn't allow. And the research and development district certainly would not allow something like a gas station, is my recollection. So I was just thinking of property owner flexibility in not tying hands as to potential other uses that they might want to make of property. That's where I was coming from on that recommendation. And I just, even though the commission's not making a decision tonight, I do want to urge the commission to please stay within the parameters of the land use discussion, which would not involve site access issues. This is just a discussion on what kinds of uses would be appropriate for this property. That's so.
Thank you, Mr. Baker. Mr. Agar, do you have something to?
So I just looked at the table of commercial uses for car washes, and they are not permitted in the neighborhood commercial. No, they are permitted in the regional, but not the neighborhood.
Andrew, I'm sorry, did you check general commercial to see?
That's an excellent point. Car washes are permitted with a conditional use in the general commercial zone. So if the community commercial land use designation was where the Planning Commission wanted to recommend, that would qualify for both the neighborhood commercial zone and the general commercial.
Questions, comments, thoughts, premonitions? A motion? Okay, the chair is going to moving forward a positive recommendation to the City Council of the Wagstaff Investment LLC Tooele South Land Use Map Amendment, request by Brent Neal, representing Wagstaff Investments LLC, to reassign the land use from high-density residential to regional commercial, to general commercial. Application number P23-483, based on the findings listed in the staff report, and I want to add that parcel to the northeast that we discussed. Do you need something more specific than that, Andrew, or does that get you where you need? Thank you, community commercial. I wrote down 4 different things as we went, so I apologize for that. We have a motion. Do we have a second?
I'll second.
We have a motion. We have a second. Commissioner Hammer.
Aye.
Commissioner Proctor.
Aye.
Commissioner Robinson.
Aye.
Commissioner Jensen.
Aye.
Commissioner Goches.
Aye.
Commissioner Sloan also votes aye. Rule that passes. And that will move to our good friends at City Council. Item number 4, a public hearing recommendation on a land use map amendment regarding a request to reassign the land use designation by Cindy McGinnis for approximately .39 acres located at 105 East, 1000 North from the existing land use designation of regional commercial to medium density residential. Andrew.
Thank you, Commissioners. This is another land use map amendment. As explained in the previous application, the land use map must comply, or all zoning map amendments must comply with the land use map. So before we can consider a zoning map amendment, the land use map must first be looked at. So this particular land use map amendment involves the approximately .39 acre parcel. Well, the parcel doesn't exist, but the area that's included in the red highlight on your aerial photograph. You'll note that there's an existing single-family residential home located on the proposed parcel. The actual lot right now is about a 5.5 acre parcel of record. The current zoning of the property is RR1 residential, which is rural residential 1 acre lots. You'll note that the properties to the north, west, and to the east also bear the same zoning. And then we have some general commercial zoning located to the south. That's where the Macy's is, the Dominion Energy facility, and I believe there's a daycare operating out of a former bank. The current land use designation of the property is regional commercial. As I explained in the last application, regional commercial land use encourages the regional commercial zoning district as well as the research and development zoning district. Those are zoning districts that encourage higher end commercial, business parks, educational facilities, and commercial activities that are utilized on a regional scale, large shopping centers and so forth. The applicant is requesting that the property be amended to the medium density residential. Now, the reason for this application is they would like to be able to subdivide about .39 acres off of the 5.5 acre parcel of record and rezone it to, or subdivide that off in order to maintain the house on its own property, and then enable the sale of the rest of the property in the future if it comes to that. In order to be able to subdivide a .39 acre parcel, there are 3 zoning districts that the applicant would need to have: the R17, R18, and R110. Those all allow lots 7,000, 8,000, 10,000 square feet. But in order to qualify for one of those zones, you have to have medium density residential on the land use map. So that's the nature of the request. It's in order to facilitate a subdivision to a smaller lot, enable the property owner to maintain the house on its own lot, and deal with the rest of the property in its own way. So this item does require a public hearing. I did not receive any comments or questions from those within the noticing radius. And if you have any questions, I'd be happy to answer them for you.
Thank you, Andrew. Questions from the commission?
I have one. The property to the east, are they going to consider the same thing in the future, or?
They are, there's a house there as well.
Right.
They are not included in this application.
I'm just wondering if if they were going to consider it, or if they're part of the 5 acre parcel or.
I'm not entirely sure. They are here tonight. They could probably address that question for you better than I could.
Okay.
Further questions? Seeing none, thank you, Andrew. This, again, does require a public hearing, so same rules as last time. If you've got some comments, questions, please come forward. And make sure we have your contact information when you're done before you leave, and go ahead and charge the pulpit. Not seeing anyone, we'll go ahead and close the public hearing and invite the applicant, if they are here, to come forward and speak if they'd like to. Not required. You sure? Thank you. Okay, we'll bring it back to the commission for further action, further comments, or a motion.
Mr. Chair, I'll make a motion if there's no comments. I move we forward a positive recommendation to the City Council for the McInnes Land Use Map Amendment request by Cindy McInnes to reassign the land use for approximately 0.39 acres from regional commercial to medium-density residential, application number P23-454, based on the findings and subject to the conditions listed in the staff report dated June 1st, 2023.
We have a motion. Do we have a second?
I'll second.
We have a motion. We have a second. Voice vote. Commissioner Hammer, how do you vote?
Aye.
Commissioner Proctor?
Aye.
Commissioner Robinson?
Aye.
Commissioner Jensen?
Aye.
Commissioner Gochus?
Aye.
Commissioner Sloan also votes aye. We'll rule that passes. Item number 5, public hearing and decision on a conditional use permit request by Curtis Tatton to authorize the use of accessory dwelling unit for caretaker only, must be located within primary structure, for a half acre of property located at 317 South, 1200 West in the IS Industrial Service Zoning District. Andrew?
Thank you, Commissioners. This is a request that's kind of unique. We don't get a lot of these. But the applicant is requesting an accessory dwelling unit for caretaker only in an existing structure located on the property highlighted in red on the aerial photograph. It's located out in our industrial service area. The property is next to 1200 West with Twilla Boulevard located to the east at approximately 300 South. And the zoning is industrial service, as are the surrounding properties, except for the RD parcel, which is now zoned TCBP, but the zoning map hasn't been quite updated yet for that. So the applicant wants to have a caretaker unit where one of the family members will live there. He did not really explain to me in great detail what they will be doing there, but the ordinance does permit this, and it does not have a lot of qualifications. The qualifications that it has is it must be in an existing structure, and it cannot be a detached accessory dwelling unit. So those are the only qualifications that the code has for a caretaker residential unit in an existing industrial facility. This is a public hearing. I did send out notices. I have not received any comments regarding this application. If the Planning Commission has any questions, I can try to answer those for you.
Thank you, Andrew. Questions, comments from the commission? You guys are really quiet.
I have a question.
Thank you.
So it says primary, or in the primary building has to be located within a primary structure. Does that, it looks like there's 3 or 4 buildings. Does it, like, how do you define which one's the primary structure? Or does that really matter?
That's an excellent question. I would define a primary structure as one that is occupied for business purposes.
Okay.
An accessory structure would be like a shed or a garage that's just used for storage purposes.
And not build something new, obviously, just for a house or some mistake.
Exactly.
But they could build a whole new primary business structure and include an ADU under that definition, couldn't they?
Yeah, I think they could.
I'm not sure what's on there. I didn't see anything that jumped out at me when I drove out there. Commissioner Hammer, did you have a question? No?
Thank you.
Commissioner Gochus?
No.
Okay. Seeing no further questions at this time, we'll open up the public hearing. Same rules we've had previously. Please come to the podium, make your comment, and make sure we have your contact information before you leave. Seeing none, we'll close the public hearing. Would the applicant like to come forward and speak on this project, or? Nope. Okay. I'll bring it back to the commission for further action.
I kind of, Mr. Chair, I thought of some other things. I don't know. I just wonder, I didn't really go look at this site very close, and that's my bad, but I wonder if has solid surface parking and stuff. Some of these buildings are set back a little bit further than some residential structures, and I just wonder about winter access for fire. I don't know the requirements in the industrial services zoning, if it's hard parking all the way to there. I just worry about getting fire apparatus in if there's an emergency in the middle of the night and there's somebody staying inside the building. If they have, because it looks like it's a fenced, completely fenced, if there's going to be a Knox box or something on the gates. I don't know if
Well, those are excellent questions for which I don't have an answer for.
okay.
What I can tell you is that this property did go through a site plan review, I'm thinking 3 years ago. And during that site plan review, they went through, geotechnical review for the surface that surrounds those buildings, and it was all approved.
Okay.
So based on that, I think the surfaces around those buildings are all drivable and passable, especially for heavy vehicles.
Okay.
I don't know about a Knox box on the fence.
I would assume that, I mean, if they're building out an interior room or a couple rooms of this building for the caretaker, that would involve permitting and inspections and things, that we could catch something on that.
They would
at
have
a
to
later
get building
date.
permits, all the
Okay.
necessary building permits for those things, yes.
Okay, all right. That was all, thanks.
Would you be comfortable with that the permit process would answer the specific issues that you're?
I think so,
discussing?
yeah, I think they would.
Commissioner Jensen, since 2009, the city code has had a requirement for the key box access for fire department. So it's very possible that the primary structure on this site already has that in place.
Okay.
That's in section 3-3-16 of the city code.
Okay.
I think Tom Adams might have been chief when we worked together to put
When we
this
did that. Okay.
in here.
Further questions, comments, motion?
I'll make a motion.
Okay. Commissioner Proctor?
I move we approve the conditional use permit requested by Curtis Tatton authorizing the use of accessory dwelling unit for caretaker only for property located at 317 South, 1200 West. Application P23-430 based on the findings and subject to the conditions listed in the staff report dated June 5th, 2023.
Thank you. We have a motion. Do we have a second?
I'll second it.
We have a motion. We have a second. Commissioner Hammer, how do you vote?
Aye.
Commissioner Proctor?
Aye.
Commissioner Robinson?
Aye.
Commissioner Jensen?
Aye.
Commissioner Goches?
Aye.
Commissioner Sloan also votes aye. Rule that passes. Item number 6, public hearing and decision on a conditional use permit request by Ray Barker to authorize the use of automobile sales and rentals for .48 acres of property located at 59 North, 50 West in the GC General Commercial Zoning District. Mr. Agard.
Thank you, Commissioners. This conditional use permit applies to the existing commercial facility highlighted in red on the aerial photograph. It's immediately west of 50 West, north of Vine Street, and I believe is an existing tire facility. I think it's Mario's Tire is what it's called. The property is currently zoned GC General Commercial, as are all the surrounding properties. However, the properties that front onto 100 West, they are in large part utilized as residential. They are non-conforming, legally non-conforming in regards to the zoning. The applicant is wishing to operate a automobile dealership, utilizing some or sharing some space in the existing structure with the tire shop. The applicant has indicated to me that they would like to display 3 to 4 vehicles on the site, and that they will have 3 or 4 employees at the site. The vehicles are indicated to have been, or to be displayed at the southwest corner of the property. There are currently 16 available parking stalls on the south side of the building. If the applicant's going to occupy 3 or 4 for display, and then also another 3 or 4 for employees, and possibly 1 or 2 for customers coming to look at vehicles, that's 10 parking stalls. And that leaves 6 parking stalls for the tire shop. A little bit of a concern there in regards to having sufficient parking for both businesses. Staff did include in the report a condition that parking must be contained on site, that they cannot park on 50 West. As you know, based upon recent ordinance changes, the 50 West right-of-way is narrower than our standard local class streets. And so if we have cars parking on both sides, that creates a problem for emergency vehicles and also for full access for other vehicles. So that condition, I think, is necessary to have in there. In case they do start doing that, we can enforce that, and we can also revisit the conditional use permit. But that's my report, and I did not receive any comments from neighboring property owners regarding this conditional use permit application. And if you have any questions, I'd be happy to answer them for you.
Thank you, Andrew. Questions from the commission? Not seeing any. This also requires a public hearing. We'll open that public hearing at this time. Same conditions as the previous four. So please come forward.
Okay, I've never done this before. I'm extremely nervous. So my name is Bernadette Gallo, and I'm here on behalf of the Twila Elks Lodge. We're here to address this automobile sales and rentals that's located at 59 North, 50 West. We are located exactly across the street. So we've actually had issues before with the clients parking their vehicles that they're working on, doing tires or whatever they're doing, parking on our property. We've never had an issue with it, it's fine, whatever. But we're worried that once they go ahead and get this going, now all their overflow is definitely coming onto our property. We're a nonprofit organization. We kind of need all of our space. So we have vendors that come through. There are times that the vendors deny coming in because there's cars in the way. Our vendors come in at 10. We don't open till 11. That pretty much tells me that there's been cars left there overnight, which we've never complained about, and we're still not. We're not complaining. We're good neighbors. They've been good to us. We've been good to them. We're just concerned. Where are they going to put these vehicles so they can have a successful business without having to use our parking lot?
Thank you, Ms. Gallo.
Thank you.
Further comment from the public? Seeing none, we'll close the public hearing. Does the applicant here wish to speak to us? Please.
I'm Ray Barker. Nice to meet you. To answer her question, we're actually just using it more as fill-in work to keep our employees employed. We're not looking to have 50 cars there or anything like that. That's the sole purpose of what we're trying to do, is keep our employees employed.
So you wouldn't have any problem with the condition that all of your cars be kept on your site?
Correct. So,
Thank you.
all right, thank you.
Can I ask that?
Well, I don't know. You're kind of troublesome, but yeah, please come forward. We don't normally as a rule, but I haven't closed the public hearing, so come up and be public.
So I guess my only question is, and I don't know if you guys can help me with this. So when there is cars parked there overnight and everything, are we does it become our responsibility to notify the local police department and have cars towed at owner's expense? I don't know if you guys can answer that question for me. I'm not really knowledgeable about this
I bet our
stuff.
city attorney can answer that for us.
They sent the girl that dares talk, and here I am. So I hope I don't fail them.
Right, well, generally speaking, for you to have cars towed, you would need to have the parking lot signed that overnight parking would be subject to towing at owner expense. I think might be equally or more effective to make a phone call to Mr. Agard and say they're violating the terms of their conditional use permit. And then he would bring back to the Planning Commission, have a discussion about enforcing the conditions.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Further comment from the public? Seeing none, we will close the public hearing, bring it back to the commission for further action. Further questions, comments? A motion, perhaps?
Mr. Chair, I have a comment, maybe, or hopefully, maybe it'll be a discussion, but I feel like it's really not fair to them to have to police other people's parking, and even the owners of the business. Wouldn't be necessarily them parking cars out there, but a customer would just pull up and it's an open parking spot, they're gonna park. But that's not fair to the lodge as well. I don't know. I wish there was an easy way to mitigate this, but I can't think of one myself.
I think,
I think we need to discuss that a little bit.
Commissioner Jensen, that's a good question. The lodge, like any property owner, could sign it, lodge parking only. But I don't get the sense that that's what they're trying to accomplish, to prevent a customer from parking there for half an hour.
Yeah. Yeah, it doesn't seem like they don't want them there at all. They just don't want to be disrupted by them. And I think for us to say that the lodge has to put signs up to stop it, that's putting a condition on the lodge almost, in my mind, not really the new business. I mean, I don't know.
That's a great point, but you wouldn't be putting a condition on the lodge. The lodge, like any property owner, has the opportunity to protect its property interests. Yeah. And so they could do that if they wanted to.
Okay.
further questions? Any action?
I just want to make a comment.
Commissioner.
It's a high-traffic road there because it's access to the Postal Service, and a lot of people use that road rather than being on Main Street. I don't see that people are parking there for the post office, but it could be a possibility that people are parking there. A lot of postal vehicles are coming in and out in that area. I didn't know if that was a problem to the Elks.
Thank you. Seeing no further questions or comments, Chair will make a motion. We approve the conditional use permit request by Ray Barker to authorize the use of automobile sales and rental at 59 North, 50 West, application number P23-445, based on the findings, subject to the conditions listed in the staff report. I want to especially highlight that second condition. Business-related on-street parking shall be prohibited, and all vehicles for both businesses shall maintain vehicle parking on the site. We have a motion. Do we have a second?
I'll second.
We have a motion. We have a second. Commissioner Hammer?
Aye.
Commissioner Proctor?
Aye.
Commissioner Robinson?
Aye.
Commissioner Jensen?
Aye.
Commissioner Goches?
Aye.
Commissioner Sloan votes aye also. We'll rule that that passes. And we move on to item number 7, public hearing and decision on a conditional use permit request by Tyson Hunt to authorize the use of a health club for .08 acres of property located at 222 Maple Street in the MUB Mixed-Use Broadway Zoning District. Mr. Agar.
Thank you, Commissioners. Just to begin, the aerial photograph that was included in your packet was incorrect. I had the property highlighted to the east. The property to the east highlighted in red. The actual conditional use permit applies to the smaller .08 parcel, 0.08 acre parcel highlighted in red, illustrated on the screen there. There was some confusion when the application was submitted because you'll note that the county parcel map shows the property line going directly through the building. And often the county parcel maps aren't entirely accurate with where the property lines are. So if it's not going through the building, it's right on the very east side of that building. Anyway, the aerial photograph that you see on your screen, that is the accurate location of the property. There is an existing structure on the property. I think it's just a garage structure. The applicant wishes to receive a conditional use permit in order to authorize a health club use in the property. What they are proposing is one-on-one strength training, so it's not going to be something on the scale of Vaza Fitness. It's just going to be some weight equipment, and then the applicant's going to meet one person there and give them exclusive weight training. However, in the mixed-use Broadway zone, which this property is currently zoned, as you can see by the purple, any kind of healthcare facility, I can't talk tonight, any kind of health club facility requires a conditional use permit. So that's why the application is here, to authorize a health club on the property. I did send out notices to the adjacent property owners, and I have not received any comments or concerns from those within the noticing radius. And then I did include some images in your packet that showed that to the north of the building there is some parking area, probably big enough to accommodate 4 or 5 vehicles. So based on what he's proposing with this business, I don't have any concerns with the parking. I think they can accommodate all off-street parking if they maintain the one-on-one or two-on-one. If they start getting bigger than that, there could be some problems. But yeah, we're recommending approval with the conditions in the report. If you have any questions, happy to answer them for you. And I think Mr. Baker has something he'd like to say about this as well, but I'll let him enunciate that.
Mr. Baker.
What I wanted to mention to you is mostly historical background. As you know, Tooele City owns properties on Broadway, being the Railroad Museum. That's a first for me, actually. In 2005, Tooele City acquired from Christensen and Griffith the parcel you see to the east of the subject property. And it was the subject of a long and challenging negotiation, and it was by no means a donation. The city paid dearly for that property in order to preserve it for the future potential of adding it to the old railroad right-of-way and the other properties on that block to hopefully someday make the entire thing into a museum complex of some kind. It was brought to my attention that our property line, that the building itself potentially encroaches on the city property. It may be, as Andrew said, that the property line is the east building wall. Since we bought it, a fenced enclosure was placed there and improved with a pad, and there may be a shed of some kind. And when Mayor Dunleavy was the mayor, I advised him that that is city property, and he advised the owner that that was city property. The owner was disappointed in that and felt that it should have been his, but that's not how property works. You buy a parcel that's been described and pay money for it. That's how it works. And so I certainly don't oppose this use, but I do want to put on the record that all the property east of the building itself is city-owned property, that we don't waive our rights to enforce, to maintain that property and enforce our rights to that property, that there can be no further encroachment or use into that property or use of it. It's just, you know, lawyers need to make a record of city interests and to make sure that no one can ever claim that it was waived. Well, we're not waiving it. So I don't think there's a conflict at all, but I just need to put that on the record and want the property owner to understand the limitations of that site. And if you don't know already, that was the former Curry Plumbing business location. So.
Thank you, Roger. Questions for Andrew before we move on?
I had a question.
Please.
I don't know if it's for Andrew or for the property owner that's requesting this. I just wondered, is this being used as a residence, or is this only going to be for the business? Is there somebody that lives at the property and, okay.
No, nobody lives there. I just use it for the business.
Okay.
Okay, for the notes and for the minutes, indicate that answer was negative. Thank you. Without any further questions or comments, we'll open the public hearing. Same rules we've had throughout the evening. If you've got a comment, please come forward. Seeing none, we'll close the public hearing. Give the applicant an opportunity to come talk to us if you'd like to. Not required. Please come forward.
I don't think I need to say too much. Yes, I just want to have full understanding on kind of what he was talking about. So when you're saying not to use the property, I guess I'm wondering what you're kind of meaning.
I'm just drawing property and legal lines. I'm not saying you can't use
Oh, okay, okay. All right, I
the
got you.
driveway or the pad or anything. Just want both owners to understand where the property line is.
Okay, and I do. I guess I was just wanting to make sure that I'm in compliance with whatever we agree here.
Thank you.
That's all I had.
Okay, thank you very much. I assume you're Mr. Hunt? Okay, we've closed the public hearing. Now bring it back to commission for further questions, comments, or actions.
Mr. Chair, I move we approve the conditional use permit request by Tyson Hunt to authorize the use of Health Club to be conducted on the property at 222 Maple Street based on the findings listed in the staff report dated 7 June 2023.
Thank you, Commissioner. We have a motion. Do we have a second?
I'll second.
We have a motion. We have a second. Commissioner Hammer, how do you vote?
Aye.
Commissioner Proctor?
Aye.
Commissioner Robinson?
Aye.
Commissioner Jensen?
Aye.
Commissioner Goches?
Aye.
Commissioner Sloan also votes aye. We'll roll that passes as well. Item number 8, public hearing and decision on a conditional use permit request by AREC, Americo Real Estate Company, to authorize the use of personal storage facility, mini storage, for 6.31 acres of property located at 2300 North, 400 East in the IS Industrial Service Zoning District. Mr. Eggard.
Thank you, Commissioners. U-Haul is proposing a new facility on the 6-acre lot highlighted in red on the aerial photograph. This is a new lot that was recently approved and created with the 400 East Commercial subdivision. It is located immediately east of 400 East and then south of 2200 North. The Union Pacific Railroad runs to the southeast. There is a new storage unit facility located to the southeast, as you can see on the map, and then there's England Construction located to the east. And I put the wrong zoning map in there. Anyway, the zoning for the property is industrial service, as are all of the surrounding properties. I need to get a city planner hired. So, this is the proposed site plan. Just remember that this is not an application to review the site plan. This is an application to consider the use. U-Haul is proposing some various uses on the property. As you know, they rent trucks and trailers and hitches and large vans and things like that. So they'll be doing that on the property, and they propose to store those vehicles on the northwest corner. The screen doesn't show the stripes very well, but I believe the packet included that. Truck rental is a permitted use in the industrial service zone, so that's not up for debate with tonight's application. They're also proposing some retail in the larger structure on the west side. They sell boxes, tape, dollies, things like that people utilize for moving. Retail is also permitted in the industrial service, so that's also not an issue with tonight's application. What they are proposing and what is being considered is personal mini storage. That does require a conditional use permit. And they're proposing two types of storage facilities. On the northeast side, under the N on the map, they're proposing a 3-story indoor storage facility. And these are not immediately vehicle accessible. You have to go inside to get to your storage unit facility. On the south side and southeast side, those are vehicle accessible storage units, where you could drive up to the front, hop out, open the door, and load your stuff. That is the use that's being considered tonight, allowing the storage facility on the site. It's an industrial property. It's surrounded by industrial properties. There's no residential uses anywhere near it. The roads are not going to be impacted by, or there are no residential streets that will be impacted by the traffic that is generated. They will go straight to SR 36 and north or south, depending on which way they're going. So staff is comfortable with the use there. It's a good location for it. And we're recommending approval of the conditional use permit with the basic housekeeping conditions listed in your staff report. And if you have any questions, I'd be happy to answer them for you. I did send out notices, and I did not receive any comments on this application. So,
Thank you, Andrew. Questions, comments from the commission?
I have a few questions. Andrew, the map was really hard to see. You know, it's kind of hand-drawn, and, I couldn't see it very well. I just wondered, since they are renting U-Haul vehicles, is there a truck repair location or a washing bay? There was nothing mentioned about water, and I couldn't see one on the map. I didn't know if that was part of that.
That's a good question. I don't know. I know the applicant should be here, have a representative here that could address that for you. With this early stage in the process, I don't believe the plans indicated all of that information. But the applicant might be able to address that for you.
Do you have other questions, Commissioner? For here?
Not at this time. I think, in the future, there will be more, because we imposed a lot of conditions on Fortress Storage, which is going to be a neighboring business. I'm not sure if we're going to impose that on this location. It's a necessary business. I think it'll be good for the community. Just want to make sure that we are giving the same conditions to this business as the neighboring business.
Okay. If I could dive into that a little bit. When Fortress Storage came in, they went through a zoning map amendment, which was a legislative item. And because it was a legislative item, the city council negotiated with the applicant for some of those improvements and was able to do that. This is a conditional use permit, and so we would have to identify impacts that are created by these storage units and then have conditions that mitigate those impacts. So I don't know if we can attach the same conditions, because this is not a legislative matter. But if there's an impact that exists because of these, by all means, we can mitigate those impacts.
Thank you.
Further questions? Thank you, Andrew. Okay, this also requires a public hearing. I'm pretty sure I don't have to go through the rules at this point of the evening, so if you've got something to say, please come forward. And applicant. Okay. You're public, he's applicant. Gotcha. Public, bring it.
Hi, good to see you all again. I'm Kelly Gallagher. I'm the owner of the self-storage facility about 2 feet from where they're proposing theirs. Because this isn't allowed use, I completely understand, and you can't stop competition. Totally get that. Again, I had been here before when they were looking at purchasing the property directly adjacent to mine from Butch. And I would just ask that consideration be given for a level playing field. The restrictions that were imposed on me, which I agreed to, and I think ended up beautiful. The site looks fantastic and the property did conform with everything. I had requested multiple story in the beginning as well, but that was denied, and I understand why it was denied, because that's the entrance into Tooele. This is beautiful. I mean, look at that. That's fantastic. I can't compete with that. And so I would just merely ask that restrictions to allow for a level playing field be imposed so that I have a fighting chance. There's only a right in, right out on that main access road off of SR 36 that comes straight east to run into their facility. From that, you would take a right and go south to mine. So anybody coming that would have to go down to the stoplight at Popeyes, take a right, come around the backside, as do many of my clients, customers, and drive down towards them. So there's only a right in, right out there. The visibility aspect is a really wonderful thing to have for self-storage. You really desire that. And so I traded height and arguing for height for beauty and aesthetics. And I think I was able to achieve that. I would just ask again that a similar playing field be applied in the conditional use to give me a fighting chance on competition, knowing full well that it's an allowed use. Get it? And I think the truck issue is going to be fantastic and much needed for Tooele. But again, if we could restrict them to a single story, as I was restricted to, that would be great. Thanks.
Thank you, Mr. Gallagher. Further comment from the public? Seeing none, we'll close the public hearing and invite the applicant to please come forward and speak and hopefully answer some questions or concerns.
Hi. My name is Cliff Lackman. I'm with Amicurl Real Estate, and I'm the owner's representative for this project. The first thing I'd like to addresses your question about the repair facilities and stuff. We do not have on-site repair facilities. We have other facilities into Salt Lake and up north at Sunset, and that's where all of our trucks go for their major repairs. A lot of our trucks are still fairly new, and so if it's something that's still under warranty, it's going to go into a dealership or whatever to be, repaired there. The only thing that we do basically at the locations is to get them, turned around and ready for the next customer to go out with. So there's not a repair facility on site. Okay?
I do
Further
have a
questions,
question,
please?
if you don't
All right.
mind, if I ask that. You said that they're going to go out for service, which is great, but what about washing? Do you have a wash bay in there, or how will you clean those vehicles?
Not really. If the truck is that bad, we would take it into one of the other locations. We do have bays at those locations for, a deep cleaning type thing like that. When we bring a truck in to turn it around, we're basically just looking at making sure that it's, cleaned out on the inside and that it's drivable, the windows are clean and stuff like that. We're not using a heavy wash or anything like that.
Okay, so no requirement for that or heavy water use?
Right. Yep. The heaviest water use that we're going to have on there is going to be for the fire protection systems.
And are all of the units required fire suppression, or is it just like the large building? Like
Just the large ones for the interior, that's required. And the other building that you could see on the other one, that's for like in and out storage, and that one's requiring fire suppression also. Any other questions?
No further questions from the commission? Seeing none? Thank you very much, Mr.
All right,
Blackman.
thank you.
Appreciate it. Thank you. I'll bring this back to, you have a question? You have a comment? Roger, would you please? Mr.
Are you
Baker.
surprised?
No.
I was here when Mr. Gallagher received his zoning approval a number of years ago under former council. And Andrew correctly summarized the difference between a legislative act, which was a rezone, and an administrative decision like tonight, where tonight you're required to approve it if it complies with the city's rules. I understand that Mr. Gallagher had a ribbon cutting this week on your facility, and
Hey.
Congratulations. I heard it was a wonderful event. We previously, not too long ago, maybe a year or two, another applicant came wanting a rezone to property north of Mr. Gallagher's project. And it was made clear that the same conditions would be applied to that rezone as were applied to Mr. Gallagher's rezone, to have a level playing field in that respect. And I think that rezone ended up being turned down anyway because of proposed three-story building in the city's gateway right on the highway. And so I suspect that's why this alternative location was selected. There is no ability by the Planning Commission to impose new requirements that are not in the city code. So it may seem like the playing field isn't level for this competitor, but it's simply a different kind of decision making, just different kind of proceeding. And so the rules are different. That's why Mr. Agard presented as he did. So, any questions about that?
I don't think so. Questions, comments from the commission? Any further action?
Just a comment.
Please.
That one of those decisions were to maintain the commercial tax base because that previous property was zoned commercial, and we didn't want to give up commercial tax base to the city. So this property is further to the east, and it isn't in that commercial zone. So that was something that was considered at that time of that decision.
Questions, comments? A motion?
I'll make a motion. I move we approve the conditional use permit request by Gunnar Carr, representing Americo Real Estate Company, to authorize the use of the personal storage facility, mini storage on 6 acres located at 2140 North, 400 East, application P23-473, based on the findings and subject to the conditions in the staff report dated June 16, 2023.
Thank you, Commissioner Proctor. We have a motion. Do we have a second?
I'll second it.
We have a motion. We have a second. Commissioner Hammer, how do you vote?
Aye.
Commissioner Proctor?
Aye.
Commissioner Robinson?
Aye.
Commissioner Jensen?
Aye.
Commissioner Goches?
Aye.
Commissioner Sloan also votes aye. We will rule that passes as well. Item number 9, should we have a public hearing on city council report? Because we're kind of in a roll here.
Yes, we should.
Councilman, thank you for joining us.
Thank you all. A couple of things from our last city council meeting. We do have a new library director, so hopefully everybody signed up for the summer reading program and you can go down and meet the new library director. His name is Chase Randall, great guy. We also approved the ordinance on the local streets and substandard local streets. I like to call them alleys, but I get in trouble when I say alleys because they're not that. So, but Garden Street, 50 West, 150. So we did approve that ordinance. We also approved the landscaping and water conservation ordinance that you guys had talked about at the Planning Commission the week before. And I do want, hopefully we represented you well. I mean, I do appreciate your comments here in the great discussion that you have at Planning Commission, and we brought up some of those same things that you brought up. So hopefully you feel represented well at city council meetings. We also approved the zoning for the Tooele City Business Park that you had at your last meeting. And this is something that kind of came up at your meeting about how do we enforce some of these things. So we did approve an ordinance that reinstates civil penalties for public nuisances. So maybe that will help with some of those nuisances that you guys brought up in your meeting. And that is all I have to report, unless you have any questions.
Councilman, any questions, comments? The councilwoman did, in fact, I won't say throw us under the bus, she actually gave us some love from that seat right there in the discussion over both of those items. So I appreciate very much that we do have a very nice communication going between the two bodies, which has not always been the case in previous councils, but certainly is now. Thank you.
Thank you.
Item number 10, review and approval of the Planning Commission minutes for the meeting held on May 24th, 2023. Looking for a motion.
A motion to approve the minutes.
Thank you. That's dying here. Do we have a second?
I'll second.
We have a motion. We have a second. Commissioner Hammer, how do you vote?
Aye.
Commissioner Proctor?
Aye.
Commissioner Robinson?
Aye.
Commissioner Jensen? Aye. Commissioner Goches?
Aye.
Commissioner Sloan also votes aye. Those are approved, and we are adjourned. Thank you all.